Today's lecture is on altered states of consciousness, one of my favorite things. And so when I talk about altered states, I got this thing off the internet last night. It has all these different things. Here we are normally awake, and then you have different drugs affect you in different ways, and then lucid dreaming or out-of-body experiences or different kinds of mystical experiences all the way down to being unconscious. And so I don't know if I agree with this little graph or whatever, but that at least gives you some ideas. You don't have to remember any of it. And definitely don't write this down, but Vadel in 2012 says there's 5 different kind of categories of altered states. Like some are like traumatic or near-death experience kind of things. Others are physical, like if you were in my religion class, I talk about tantra as far as sex, or different things that people do where they fast or go through physical ordeals. And then psychological could be like meditation, hypnosis, these trances that people put themselves in. And then you also have abnormal altered states, but the ones I'm going to focus on for today are these right here. I'm not going to focus on all this stuff up here. I'm going to focus on psychoactive drugs. So when I talk about drugs, I want to talk about 4 categories. So as far as the test is concerned, if I give you an example of a drug, like heroin, for instance, is an opiate, or cocaine is a stimulant. So I'll show you the examples. I'm not going to assume you have as much experience with drugs as I do. Okay, so here's the 4 categories, but before I get to them, just some general things about drugs. One of the things that goes on with drugs is they alter your energy. I mean, nobody likes to be over here if I can get a better pen. You don't want to be here or here, right? Scared or depressed. One of my problems with antidepressants is they don't make me excited or happy. They just don't. Now, the thing about anxiolytics, the anti-anxiety drugs, oh, they'll bring you down here, but the benzos, man, scare the shit out of me. I start getting Ativan. It's like, oh my God, where's my pill? I've got to have them all the time. But anyway, for centuries, ever since man's been on the planet, we've been trying to manipulate our energy over here into these 2 quadrants. Now, even if you, here's my little chakra guy again, but I believe in energy. This is why I'm always trying to manipulate my energy. And people say, oh, I don't do drugs. It's like you manipulate your energy one way or the other. It could just be with coffee and wine, but those are drugs. Caffeine, alcohol. I mean, just because you drink it doesn't make it not a drug. Now, all drugs, this is why I taught this stuff, take their action right in here in the synapse. And so right in here in the synapse, they alter the way the neurotransmitters work. And remember, the neurotransmitters have these lock and key fit down here. So if you think about drugs, you don't have to remember this for the test, but some are agonists. What does that mean? They increase the likelihood of firing. Either they make the keys, you don't have to remember this piece over here, release more often. They act as a key, as a mimic. We'll talk about drugs that are mimics. Or they block the reuptake of the key, and the key gets recycled over and over. Anyway, in this case, these drugs increase firing. The other one's easier, antagonist. My mom would always say, stop antagonizing your sister. That means like you're working against her, right? And so, or interfering with her. And so these decrease, like they either make the keys come out too soon, or in another case, they can fit into the keyhole and actually block it up. Over here, it mimics the key. Over here, it's like a piece of gum in the keyhole of my house. I can't get my key in there, so I can't unlock the house. The first category of drugs are the opiates, and you can see an opium poppy right up here, and I think I have a few pictures. What they do is they cut the bulb right here of the flower, and then they come along, and you can see that it's dried right over in here as it's like leaked out, and so that's tar like substance, and then they scrape that tar off. That's the black opium. And out of that is what they produce the opiates with. And these are the 3 kind of, whatever, at least the 2 originals, heroin and morphine. Really, it was morphine, I think. And heroin came along because they thought it would be a better derivative, less addictive. But these come directly, from that black tar opium. And so this is, I think, heroin down here. But anyway, we're more familiar with the opioids. They're more synthetic, man-made, that mimic the opiates and have the same kind of effects. And so I'm not going to, for the test purposes, I don't care. This is like Android. It's almost a human. But these are just the six. If I ask you one of these six, or actually I should have said these two down here, just because these two are such a big players right now. Fentanyl, that's dangerous as a mother effer. And Oxycontin or oxycodone, those combinations are killing so many people. I mean, 60,000 people a year there for a while. So it's insane, how much people are abusing the opiates. Okay, so I guess, if I ask you one of these, just remember, they have this opiate effect. I don't care if you know this right here, this difference. Now, I usually show side effects, I'm not going to ask you this on the test, but why do we take opiates? Because they reduce pain. They are God's gift, because otherwise, if you went to have a surgery, you didn't have opiates, it would suck. But for people that get a hold of them, why do people do them? Because they make you feel good. It's like my mom, and why do people do drugs? I don't understand. It's like, well, why do people do sex? Do they do sex irresponsibly? They sure do, but it feels good. Okay, so the things I hate about opiates are the nausea and the nod, getting sleepy, and my stomach hurts after 2 or 3. I don't like that. Okay, so anyway, enough about that. Opiates work on the same pathway that endorphins work on. What are endorphins? Well, we have natural pain relievers in our body, and so they call them endogenous opiates or natural opiates. And so since we have keys called endorphins, we have keyholes for endorphins down here, and the opiates just happen to work on those keyholes that endorphins, our natural kind of pain relief system, works on. Here we go. So that's like the runner's high. This is why I like hiking. I've been missing it lately because it's been 105 degrees. But when I start hiking, I want it to hurt. If it doesn't hurt, I don't get the endorphin release. Okay, so since we have these keyholes, I hope you remember this from the last test, that the endorphins will fit into these keyholes and give us this natural runner's high. Well, it just so happens things like morphine, codeine, heroin, fentanyl, OxyContin, they already mimic this key right over here. If I can get my pen to work right. Oops, I didn't do it very good. And since they mimic that key, they don't need to use my body supply of keys up here. They just say, hey, we're going to surpass that or bypass that. We're just going to flood your pain relief system with keys, and that's why you feel good. So this is why I do like teaching biology, because I can set the table so we can eat the dinner right now, and it makes more sense what the drugs do to you because you know about the synapse and the keys. The second category of drugs are the depressants. I don't like depressants. If you're a depressed person, don't do depressants. But anyway, they bring your energy down. So that's easy to understand. They depress you. And so they work on the neurotransmitter GABA. So for each one of the categories of drugs, one of the things I want you to remember for the test is A, if I give you an example of drug, can you put it in the right bucket? And B, what neurotransmitter do they work on? So the first one, opiates, worked on the endorphin system, right? This one works on the GABA system. And so GABA, when it crosses the cleft or the gap, the synapse, and it binds to the receptor sites over here, it shuts this second neuron down. It does something called hypopolarize it, make it super negative. On the inside, remember, it has to go from negative to positive to get the spark, so it actually closes the house down, is what I call it. So there's no way the second one is going to fire. Now, it doesn't do that all neurons in your body, otherwise you would die, you know what I mean? But it does it to enough of them to have this sedating or depressing effect. Now, this leads to the most dangerous drug I've ever done. I think I have this next. It's alcohol. I'm not kidding. I love whiskey, but whiskey don't love Tim back. every time I ever got in trouble, it was on alcohol. Not hard drugs. I've done a ton of acid, LSD, ecstasy, ketamine, every single thing under the sun. But alcohol has always fucked me up. And when I used to go to AA all the time, they were going, it's alcohol and drugs. I've never done drugs. It's like, just because you drink it doesn't make it not a depressant. Your method of delivery has nothing to do with it. Now, you don't have to write this down, but this is the reason I don't like alcohol. First of all, it's like I'll do anything. I just get buck wild crazy on alcohol. And the other thing that it will do is I can't control my body as much as I want to. Like when I talk to the officer, I can't control my tongue to articulate my situation. Can y'all dig? Okay, so some of the depressants, alcohol is one of them, so it works on GABA. Some of the depressants just have this sedative effect where they kind of like chill you out. So that's chill out. And other ones knock you out. Okay, so knock you out, hypnotics. Now, I don't think people do these as many except that, they want to go to sleep. We'll get into that later. So these are the first ones. I thought I was going to talk about them later. Hypnotics. You don't have to know a lot about this, but I've had, excuse me, a lot of nursing students. And then they start drilling me about all these different things they have to hand out. But all these things that end in B-A-R-B. Like, it seems like back in the 70s, people were doing barbiturates. I mean, I never, have friends of mine goes, dude, I scored some Quaaludes. Let's just go and take them and just lay on the floor for hours. It's just like, no. It's like, but anyway, Seconal is the only one I might possibly ask you on the test. Here it is right here. And it's one of these barbiturates. Now, the second group are the ones that we're more familiar with, and that's why I saved them for last, I guess. Here's Valium right here, Xanax, Klonopin, Ativan. I mean, those things, they do chill me out, but then they're so addictive. Like in a couple of days, I'm already addicted to them. It's like, my ex-wife Wendy has been on them for 20 years. It's like she could never come off of them, even for 2 days. I'm not kidding. Okay, so as far as the test, Valium, Xanax. So I gave you 4 examples, I think, in the depressant category: alcohol, Valium, Xanax, and Seconal. But all of these work on GABA to reduce some of the electrical firing that's going on in your body. The third category is the easiest. It says it right in the name, stimulants. What do? They stimulate you. They turn you up, and Tim loves getting turned up. Okay, but here's the side effects. Please don't write all this down, but here we go. I mean, this is why I taught you about your sympathetic nervous system. All they do is activate that fight or flight system, dilate your pupils. You feel like you're invincible. I can fight anything. But my heart is going a million miles an hour. I never want to eat, for 2 or 3 days. Hopefully you haven't been on a 3-day binge like Tim has, but I'm not sleeping. Then I start, it's like, did you hear that? I'm gonna go check in the backyard. There might be people up in those trees. It's like, Tim, there's not even any trees and we don't even have a backyard. It's like, chill out. It's like you're skitzing out. And later on when I talk about schizophrenia, I'll talk about how it relates to, people who are tweakers. Because when I used to be around tweakers, I didn't do this as much as I smoke weed and do psychedelics. But they would call it schitzing. It's like, but you're calling it schitzing and you're doing it to yourself. Okay, later on we'll get into this. Now the 3 drugs are real easy. 1, 2, 3. Once again, if I ask you stimulants, you better be able to put one of these 3 into that category for the test. Now these 3 work on the same mechanism, which is the neurotransmitter dopamine. I'm fixing to show you a movie about dopamine. But dopamine is that pleasure neurotransmitter. Even if you don't do drugs, like if you level up on a video game, eat a chocolate cake, someone says your name, if you're happy, dopamine is getting released. So let me show the movie on the next slide about dopamine, and then I'll come back and try to explain it.
After the release of dopamine from an axon terminal, it activates its receptors and then is normally inactivated by a reuptake process that removes it from the synaptic cleft. The stimulant cocaine, however, blocks the reuptake of dopamine into the axon terminal. With cocaine blocking its reuptake, dopamine continues to activate its receptors for a time period longer than normal. With cocaine blocking its reuptake, dopamine continues to activate its receptors. Constant use of cocaine can lead to unusually large amounts of dopamine in the synaptic cleft. As the dopamine continues to stimulate its receptors, the person may develop cocaine psychosis, the symptoms of which resemble some aspects of schizophrenia, especially those involving paranoia. When the person stops using stimulants, the symptoms of psychosis usually diminish.
So what's happening on this little movie is that the cocaine comes up here and it makes this little barrier. And so normally these little yellow things right here, which are the neurotransmitters, will come out here and they'll get used one time and then they'll get destroyed. But what cocaine does is it keeps blocking them from getting destroyed or taken back up, reuptook, and it stays in the gap longer and it keeps bouncing around. And as it bounces around, it keeps opening the door over and over and over again. Thus, your neuron keeps firing a lot faster than it normally would, kind of like a machine gun. This is why cocaine makes you feel high. Not that it gives you more dopamine, but that it reuses your dopamine. Why am I making a big deal of this? Because it's a selective dopamine reuptake inhibitor. And if you're on an antidepressant, they call them selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. If you can see that out there, they don't give you more serotonin, they just recycle the serotonin that you already have. The fourth category is hallucinogens. This is my favorite Alex Gray painting right here. It's called Oversoul. I love this, and I also love hallucinogens. Now, I have some side effects here, but please don't write these down once again. This is my joke. Trying to explain an acid trip to someone that's never done it is like trying to explain an orgasm to a virgin. I don't know. It's kind of words don't do it justice. You know what I mean? So hallucinations, hallucinogenics. That honeycombing is that thing I showed you where if you watch the black and white lines, then the walls would start crawling. Psychotic episode. What does that mean? Well, scientists believe it induces psychosis or schizophrenia, that you have a psychotic break for 10 hours, let's say, on your acid trip, and then you come back to reality. And I can understand that because I've been on enough acid trips. But I argue the opposite thing, that you're already in psychosis. And that's why when Morpheus comes to you, he says, all I'm offering you is the truth. And if you look at the Native Americans, the way they approach it, they call it the medicine. Do you want the medicine? You want the truth? This is what I think it is, but you can take my religion class. Okay, so here's the forest and it has all kinds of information, and normally we're constrained on how much information we can pay attention to. This is why I like getting turned up, not turned down. Drugs that expand my consciousness. This is why I love the psychedelics, because now I can see more of the forest. They're consciousness expanding tools. This is what Alan Watts calls them. And so they're not just like, hey, let's go trip and go to Coachella and get real fucked up. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not what they're for. The Native Americans have a reverence about them, especially the peyote. And so we could get into that, but that's not the direction I'm going to go. Okay, so consciousness expanding. Well, a lot of musicians have used them. I don't know if you like the Beatles, but I do. And so consciousness expanding, their early albums like Revolver and Rubber Soul, they were good, but they're kind of like, poppy, bubblegummy. And then bam, something happened. They started doing psychedelics and they started producing all this weird stuff like We All Live on a Yellow Submarine and the White Album and like some really weird stuff, right? Sergeant Pepper's. And it's not that it was just really weird, but they were fucking with the scheming and the timing of music and changing music. Literally changing music. Another person that changed the world, and you probably have right in your hand, is Steve Jobs right here. If you have an iPhone, he says taking LSD was one of the most important things I ever did. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just saying this is what he said. And if you look at Apple products, they're completely different than any other kind of computer products that are on the market. Okay, number one, psilocybin. Psilocybin or magic mushrooms. I like what the native South Americans call them, flesh of the gods, because this is what I think is the true sacrament. Transubstantiation is the flesh of the gods. You're going to have a spiritual experience much more than a cracker is going to give me, but whatever. I am Catholic, but I do believe in psilocybin. I wish it was legal here. It's legal in Denver and some other places. I think are starting to legalize it, but I would microdose on psilocybin every day instead of antidepressants. Okay, number 2, LSD. I love LSD. Love it, love it, love it. Lysergic acid. And so 1930s was, I think, invented by a Swiss chemist. I could be wrong about that, but people started to do it. And this is blotter. You take one of these little hits, or 2 or 3 or 4 if you're TM, and it's dipped in, the liquid, and then it's dried, and so the residual is on there. Now, you could also take it, a quarter hit, or here's a whole sheet. I could have shown whatever, window pane and microdot and all this other shit. Okay, so both LSD and psilocybin, as far as the test, those two so far work on serotonin. I'm not going to say how they work because it's completely not understood, and maybe I'm a dummy when it comes to that, but there's all kinds of specific serotonergic receptor sites that are specific. There's not just one kind of serotonin keyhole. Okay, so let me get to the part I want to talk about. It goes back to Freud's iceberg and that how acid could be used as a therapeutic tool. I call it the ladder because I stole this from Jacob's Ladder, the movie. In that movie, they were trying to get soldiers who were taking psychedelics. They laced their food with psychedelics and thought they would go down the ladder and unleash this primordial beast. It didn't end up too well. Now, this is why Tim doesn't say to take acid to everybody. Not everybody should take acid. It's like, if you go down the ladder and you can't handle this, Leonardo DiCaprio, Shutter Island, I don't want to fucking babysit your ass on a trip while you're over there curled up in the fetal position. Fuck that shit, because Tim's going to be getting buck wild in the deep end of the swimming pool. And if you don't want to go to the deep end, don't go there with Tim, because I like scary. I want to go down here because I don't want to have any fucking secrets. I don't want to be like Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay, so enough about the ladder. Here are some of my favorite trippers. Ken Kesey, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't really like Timothy Leary that much. He's okay. Alex Gray, who does all the tool artwork, I showed you that. Terrence McKenna. I really love Ram Dass. His name was Richard Alpert. He was working with Timothy Leary, and then they broke apart, and he went over and studied with the Maharishi, and then changed his name to Ram Dass, Servant of God. This is Carlos Castaneda. You can't see him, but this is my dude. This is my homeboy. Alan Watts is the shit. If you don't know about Alan Watts, you need to go look up some Alan Watts today. So, Timothy Leary says the psychedelic experience is a journey. That's where they get the word trip. You're taking a trip, and the drug does not produce the experience. What? It acts as a chemical key. Chemical key? A key opens a... There's a door in my head? Have you ever heard of Aldous Huxley, A Brave New World? He also wrote The Doors of Perception. The Doors. If y'all like Jim Morrison, The Doors of Perception, about his first mushroom trip. And so the doors, can you go through the door? But once you unlock the door, kind of like Steve Jobs was talking about, you don't need to keep unlocking the door over and over and over. Even Ken Kesey, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, right here, what I told the hippies with LSD can be a door. But they keep going through the door over and over without trying to learn anything from it. That's like a white people philosophy about tripping. The next psychedelic or hallucinogen I'm going to talk about is ecstasy. I don't think of it as an hallucinogen as much, but this is the way they categorize it, MDMA. I can write on here. And so here's all these little ecstasy tablets. And so now it makes sense if I go back to this ladder idea. Ecstasy to me is the better ladder. I call it little secrets. Why? Because one time I was on my way to a party and I ran into this dude that was a dealer, and I bought some shit off of him, and he rammed all these little pills in my hand, and he says, "Here, Tim, have some little secrets." And I was like, "Why do you call them little secrets?" He goes, "Because you're going to tell little secrets tonight, And so are all the people that are going to take these. And you're going to be okay with your little secrets, and you'll be okay with theirs. It makes complete sense to me. Because this is why I'm so transparent. When I've rolled way too many times, I've been on Molly way too many times, and when the thing that she taught me, even if it's a bad thing or a bad way to get there, is that there's nothing wrong with me. To be beautiful means to be yourself. This is why I think coming out of the closet has nothing to do with being gay. It has everything to do with being yourself. Peace, love, unity, and respect. Does this make sense what I'm saying right now? I love this idea because this is who I really am. When I get queer, I get good, and it has nothing to do with my sexuality. It has everything to do with my acceptance of myself. So I think I have this little movie I was going to show you on the next slide.
I got told as a young child that my mind works differently, which I kind of refused to accept. I don't really care what people think about me. I rave because you could sort of call it your happy place. You're about to witness the rave kit. I've got the rave leggings, the famous rave leggings. I've then got the raving headband. And then I've got the third most important feature, the rave goggles. I bought them off eBay for £2 with 99p delivery.
We know you, man, from Tobacco Dogs, man.
Oh yeah.
Famous guy.
People have come up to me at events in the past and say, oh, can we have some of what you're on? And then you just get out the water and see how they like it. I was very bad at social situations. I didn't really like engaging with a lot of people. I was very hide in my room in the evenings and all weekend sort of guy. Once I started raving, I built up a lot of self-confidence with doing my own thing and expressing it. That's when I just had a massive boom and it all just went poof. The longest time raving I have done was 38 hours across 4 raves. On average per week, I will do 1 to 3 events. I like to spread happiness via social media by putting the videos up. I like to see other people smiling at them.
I'm Rose. I've known Bradley for over a year now, just from out and about at the raves. Bradley would be ringing me up all the time. Come on, come out to a rave. I missed my little raving sister and all this. And he did actually just get me out. Doesn't matter how ill you are, just get out and do stuff. And he's just a massive inspiration. He's just an amazing person.
That energy you create, it flows. You know, people like energy. No one wants to be sad, ever. Everyone wants to be happy.
This next part of the lecture is for my dad. I'm not going to ask you it on the test, but we do live in a state where we have medical marijuana. I have my card, and so I smoke weed a lot. My dad is like this. Linda, I think Tim's on the marijuana. It's like, Dad, even if you've never smoked the marijuana, does like White Widow look the same thing as Purple Urkel? If I break your ass off on a White Widow, you're going to feel different effects than this one right here. They look different. A 3-year-old can tell you that. And so 2 of the components that people usually focus on are THC, that's the psychoactive, the thing that gets you high, and CBD. And so that has a little bit of a relaxing effect, but works more on your body. So the CBDs, when you break the plant apart, you have also CBGs over here and CBCs and different kinds of THCs, not just one kind. I don't want to get into all that right now. Now, one of the basic things, this is my whole problem, is like, when I go to the dispensary, which I go, a couple of times a week at least, it's like, at least know the difference between sativa and indica. Don't try to sell me a bunch of indica if I need a sativa. And what does this mean? Well, White Widow and those kinds of things, Cindy 99, These guys, green crack, are going to get you turned up. And if you are prone to anxiety, you got to be careful. I got to be careful with like fucking around with sativas because I'll get too turned up and too high. Okay, the other side of the fence is like indicas, Indonesia, Kushes, OGs, it gets you all that high school high, that yumminess where you just want to like, play video games and lay down on the couch. But that relaxation over here kind of relates to dopamine. It feels good, right? And over here, that getting turned up kind of relates to turning your mood up. I think it's a better antidepressant than the antidepressants. I use a combination of antidepressants and sativas. Whatever, when I go to sleep at night, I use indicas. It works better than taking a fucking sleeping pill from the doctor, but that's just Tim. You can go and whatever, not like me now. It's like, now there's all kinds of methods of delivery. If I go to the dispensary, like you can get the shatter, crumble, the waxes, all the different, resinous side products that you can like oil rig that shit. I don't like dabbing. It's just too much, whatever, and you get too fucking high. I use this. But I mean, I used to use a lot of flour, but after a while, it's like all that tar from bong hits and everything else. It's like the gummies and the tinctures are good, and the Rick Simpson oil, you can't see it down here, but they don't work on my body for some reason. And so just any method of delivery in any strain doesn't work for me. I mean, I get certain strains, I throw them right in the trash. Fuck this shit. I'm smoking all this green crack. It's going to make me crazy as a motherfucker. So that's a little bit about it. The last thing I'll say is this. When you look at the chart, I always think about parents, like Jack Herrera, for instance. If you put Jack and then Casey Jones together, you get Jack Jones, which they sell. You know what I mean? And so I love Cindy 99 because she's a hybrid. She's not too far leaning to the turned up side. And also Purple Urkel because he's not too far over here. But if I get way, way over here like this, Hindu Kush or God's Gift, it's okay for me. I tend to do better with Mr. Nice and standing over here. And like in the middle is probably the best place for me to be. Okay, I hope that part of the lecture made sense. I would be remiss to talk about drugs without talking about addiction. So many people in my family, including me, struggle with drugs and alcohol. And so if you don't have anything wrong with your body and you're a pretty happy person, don't fucking take drugs. Don't fuck your body up to where you can't unfuck it up. I'm not kidding either. It's like I pulled so many levers and punched so many buttons and done so many things. I don't know how to get back to normal. So, and then I go to the doctor all the time and they feed me full of pills. I mean, just like if you're normal, don't do anything. Okay, but anyway, addiction. I have this from one of my favorite people. I don't know if y'all love Ozzy Osbourne as much as I. When I talk about addiction, I talk about three terms: tolerance, which you should already know. How much does it take for you to get the desired effect? This is my whole problem with weed. I smoke so much weed that I just can't get high. You know what I mean? I don't know if y'all have this high problem, but I do. So what's the second thing? Dependence. Am I hooked on it? It doesn't have to even be like drugs, like me. Are you hooked on caffeine? Try to go 1 week without caffeine and see if you have problems with your body or your thoughts or your emotions. Try to go without nicotine. Nicotine was the biggest bitch of a drug I had to kick. I'm not kidding. I cannot believe how hard nicotine. It's supposedly more addictive than heroin is. But anyway, so these are the three terms for the test. How much does it take? That of course increases over time, just like with beer. Your first beer gets you really drunk. Now you have to drink maybe 4 or 5. And so dependence, hopefully you don't get hooked on it because when you go away from it, you might have problems. I mean, normal people have ups and downs. I mean, when I see people that are happy at church, like I know Charlie and he's 94, he's the happiest person in the world. He doesn't do drugs. It's like Charlie was just born like that. Yeah, he has down days, but he has pretty much up days all the time. So that's why I'm saying don't fuck with your system. Because see, the addict has a different. I made this up. You don't have to remember this. Like, I love being turned up, like I told you. I love being up here. I thought I found heaven. Even when I was like on Special K last year at the ketamine clinic, like, oh my God, you know what I mean? I want to be here every day. And so, but what I hate is being down here, coming down. I hate being down here. Now, if you think about an addict over time, because of tolerance, you just can't get as high. And then pretty soon, you just need to get back to normal functioning. And that's when the drug becomes your medicine. That's why they call it a fix. And this is what drugs taught me. Drugs is one of the best teachers of all time, especially crack cocaine. I've done it. You know what I mean? It's just such an insidious drug. This is what Lama Yeshe says. When Lord Buddha spoke about suffering, he wasn't referring to superficial problems like my arm hurts or I have a backache. It's your mind is suffering. I don't want to get into the Four Noble Truths right now, but I wish I could. No matter how much of something Tim gets, he's already ready for more. I don't even care if I'm having sex. I'll be ready. It's like, when am I going to have sex the next time? You know what I mean? It's just, what a weirdo. It's just like, this is what crack cocaine taught me. It's like, I was like, you would smoke it, and then like 3 minutes later, you're going, dude, I'm not high anymore. I got to go smoke some more. Dude, I'm not high anymore. I got to go smoke some more. You have to keep buying it over and over. It's like, dude, it didn't last very long. It's like, that's why I like crystal meth. It lasts forever. But whatever. Drugs taught me about unceasing desire. You could never fill it up. You can never fill that unceasing desire up. So I was in AA for a long time, but now I use medical marijuana, and so they don't like that, but whatever. I'm not going to, AA did a lot of good things for me, especially get me off of liquor. But then I would look around the meeting and I would think people are smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and monsters, and they're addicted to something else. They're chasing tail. Whatever they do in there, it's like, that's the problem. Is like, you just change your drug. And then pretty soon they're going, oh, we're not like normies. It's like, I think everybody's a drug addict. It might just be shopping or eating potato chips for you or too much ice cream, but you have a fucking drug. I want to go Marilyn Manson right here. We're all stars now in the dope show. What are you medicating, Tim? Because I'm always medicating. This is what I always notice when I trip and I'm really on a good trip. I go, dang, why do I smoke weed and do this and drink these monsters and all this other stuff? This is where I want to be. It's like, what am I medicating? I call it the soul wound. You can put everything you want to inside of that soul wound. Later on, I'll talk about the jihad, the holy struggle. A lot of people are like, oh my God, I don't feel so good. It's like, wake up, it's the holy struggle. You're not supposed to feel good. You know what I mean? You're on planet Earth. Everybody's like, I'm afraid of going to hell or purgatory. It's like, dude, you're in purgatory right now. And see, when I think about the soul wound, I thought about that AA analogy where everybody would give up alcohol, including me, and then I would just drink too much monsters and smoke cigars every day and try to replace that buzz with something else. You know what I mean? And that there were certain drugs in the grab bag that are okay and certain ones that aren't okay, that our society's okay with you shopping too much or, things like this. Then I started thinking about this grab bag is like these little temporary band-aids over my soul wound, and they never quite work. It only works for about 10 minutes. Having sex with a pretty girl, getting real high, tripping. Even if I'm rolling my ass off, the next day it's like, oh, I wish I was still there. You know what I mean? And all those things, in a way, are the little things I think I have on here that I call gods. Because it's the thing I focus on that I think if I just had enough of that thing, I would be happy. So I must worship it. One of my friends who was killed in a motorcycle accident, his name is Robert, he asked me this one time. He goes, Tim, what do you spend 70% of your day thinking about? It's like, I don't know. And he goes, well, when you figure it out, then that's your God. It's what you worship. And if you're not thinking about God, you're thinking about something else in this grab bag, and that's what I've made my God. Anyway, I hope you like this lecture. I really like giving it. I'll see you next time.